Hello, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the 309th episode of The Business of Story. I've been bringing you story artists from around the world for 6 years now, and a question I've been getting over and over during the past year of COVID, while clients and customers had more time on their hands, is this: should I start my own podcast? And if so, how should I do it? So I posed that question to today's guest, Jeffrey Hayzlett, who has some relatively frank insights on the subject.
If you're a consultant, trainer, coach, or even if you're a freaking dry cleaner, okay? This is the key thing. You have to be a media machine. You have to be a media company. That's what you have to know. You have to understand that COVID's done this. COVID didn't cause it, it accelerated it. To the point now you need to know, because there's so many choices for people to find you and your message that right now they've got to find a way to find you. So you've got to create ways to find them. And if they're listening to podcasts, well, how can you ignore that? You got to be on them. You got to go out there and you can use it to create your own category.
Jeffrey Hayzlett is a global business celebrity, speaker, best-selling author, and chairman of C-Suite Network. He is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett and Executive Perspectives on C-Suite TV, and business podcast host of the Hero Factor podcast on C-Suite Radio, which we will talk a lot about today. Hayzlett is a well-traveled public speaker, former Fortune 100 Chief Marketing Officer, and author of numerous best-selling books, including The Hero Factor: How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures. He is in 5 business Hall of Fames, including the Speaker Hall of Fame, Sales and Marketing Executives, Business Marketing Hall of Fame, Direct Marketer Hall of Fame, and the Industry Award of Distinction from the National Association of Quick Printers, of all places. So strap in for a robust exploration on the power of podcasting to attract your audience, build industry loyalty, grow by offering valuable insights, and converting listeners into customers. Please welcome to the Business of Story, Jeffrey Hayzlett. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. What a pleasure.
You could be pretty much on any show, anywhere, at any time, and I'm just honored to have you here. Why did you decide to come on the Business of Story?
Well, I got to tell you, it's very simple. You ask me. I like to do all the shows, and I like to do them all. And I do at least one podcast interview a day, if not more than one. And then I sometimes do other occasional media interviews like television. I do a great deal of television commentating still, even for my ranch in South Dakota. But, the reason I do shows is that you ask me. So, most people sometimes they're afraid to ask people who might be, and I'm not saying I'm in that caliber, but if you're a, notable celebrity or notable thought leader in the industry, some people, oh my gosh, they're intimidated, and they shouldn't be. They should ask anybody. We have our C-Suite Radio Network, which is a podcast network of right now, at the time we're taping, over 400 podcasters. Someone said, what's the benefit? He said, I can never get guests like you get. I said, yeah, you can. You're part of the C-Suite Radio Network. That affiliation gets to say, it's like being part of NBC. You might not have the best sitcom and your show's at 3 a.m., but nonetheless, you're still part of the network.
Well, you're very kind and you're very humble, because I can tell you are obviously a celebrity and thought leader in the space. But there are a lot of celebrity and thought leaders in the space that won't give you the time of day or respond to an email. And so I think maybe that says a lot about your success too.
Yeah, that's bullshit. If you listen, there's a notable celebrity that once said, when you make it to the top, you have to send the elevator back down for everybody else. And I think that's our responsibility, because listen, by making podcasting better, by making interviews better, by making businesses better, we all benefit. My goodness. I mean, why wouldn't you want to help people? Why wouldn't you want to do it? Part of our C-Suite Network creed is what's your give. You don't show up just with a catcher's mitt waiting for the business to come your way. You got to give something back. And by the way, the more you give, the more you get. That's the way it works in this world. And if you don't get, who cares? You gave, and that makes you feel good.
So we are going to explore today telling your story, on a podcast using that medium. And we're going to explore that quite a bit, both audio, which all I am here is audio on the business of story. Although once I get my internet figured out up here in the hinterlands of Northern Arizona, I'm going to, consider doing live video plus audio. And I want to explore that with you
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Also want to explore really another podcast. Does the world need another podcast? Why? Does it or
Well,
does it not? But
absolutely. First of all,
before
they all need them. They need them. Go ahead. All right, you finish, and
but
I'm jumping
before
in.
that,
I'm ready to
Jeffrey,
go. I'm excited.
you have a fascinating background and you probably have covered this a lot, but I'm not sure our listeners know about it. You were at Eastman Kodak leading up, you're working hard there, but leading up to its demise in 2011. And they did everything in their, maybe everything in their power to try to overcome the digital revolution, and they didn't do that. So, what I would like, if we could just spend a few minutes, could you share your time there, the 4 years you spent there, 2006 to 2010, what
Yeah.
you saw happen to that American icon, and maybe how that informs and guides what you do today and how you coach and help other business people like myself not fall into that same obsolete trap. So can we
Well,
start with that one?
that obsolescence of Kodak started much before I got there, much before
Right.
some of the other folks got there. We were just trying to clean it up because that's what good people do. You're asked to do. I always do tough jobs. I mean, I do the jobs that most people don't want to do, and I've always been that way because there's not a lot of people who are business first responders who want to rush into where no person wants to go. And that's what I've always been. That's what a lot of people that I work with in the C-suite network do. So when I got to Kodak, it was clear that the odds are we're not going to be able to save it, but what can we save and what can come out of there? And that's indeed what most of us were trying to do, at least at the top leadership, the top 4 or 5 officers. That was our job. And that's what we were responsible for. That was our conditions of satisfaction. So, it was, you're walking into a culture of where it believed its best days were behind it. And that's tough to overcome because if you think, people say, Jeff, make it like it used to be. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't look like I used to 20, 30, 40 years ago. I actually, I don't look the same. And so, but I look better. And see, there's this difference in the state of mind. I'm actually better today at 60 than I was at 20. And I think I look better. And I think I walk better. I think I make love better. I think all of those things, I think I do better at 60 than I did at 20. And certainly I'm better at business. So it's a state of mind. And so, there was a culture there that had swagger and lost its swagger. And when you have that occur, man, it's tough to come back. It's like, a winning football team who once was, the Super Bowls, but they're living back of the stories of the 60s and 70s. What the hell? You can't live in a story of 60s, 70s. You're not the same. You're not the same team. Don't have the same players. Don't have the same products. You don't have the same processes. You don't have the same audience. You don't have the same everything. So go live in today's world. And that was the toughest thing. So what my advice to everybody that you're doing is really to change, adapt, or you die. That's it. Change,
Yeah,
adapt, or you
because of
die.
COVID, a lot of people got punched in the nose and lost their swagger, and they're trying to find it and they're trying to come out of it again. And I
Punched
imagine
in
you
the
see
nose.
this with a lot of companies you work with.
Yeah. Punched in the nose. Heck, we got punched right between the leg. I mean, this is the COVID was the toughest thing for most businesses. Now, COVID didn't cause these things to happen to our businesses. They accelerated it, and they accelerated the potential for change. I know businesses that are actually doing better as a result of COVID. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Now, some are doing worse. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't like it. And then there are some of us who were hit like a giant hammer, ball peen hammer, right between the eyes. Our business included, the C-Suite Network. We had 100 events that we were doing in face-to-face. That was the main way that we were making money, was face-to-face events and people getting together and having sponsors and millions of dollars of this and that. And then overnight, poof, it was gone. And get this, I had paid for deposits throughout the rest of the year for events, major events. I rented a battleship in Norfolk, Virginia, for gosh sakes, in May. And have you ever rented a battleship? Well, let me tell you something. They don't give your deposits back. Okay. All right. So even if it's an act of God. So yeah, we were hit with a ball peen hammer, but you know what? We came out of it better. We came out of it stronger. We grew by 450% just in listeners on C-Suite Radio. We grew by 120% in new shows. We grew 137% in new episodes. We just had the best sales month we've ever had in the history of our company. Well, you do that by saying, okay, I get what's going on in front of me. I get what's happening. I get what's happening to me, but I'm not going to let it affect me in that manner. I'm going to change it. And so right away, a year ago, last year, when everybody was in on March 13th, shit hit the proverbial fan, okay? And we didn't have face masks, okay? From a business perspective, I said, we're not going to, none of this survival crap. We got to drive and thrive. We got to move past it. We have to get beyond this. We have to rechange our business model, or we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to change, or we're going to die. And literally, I think that's what, and by the way, we were all faced with that, whether with, personally, wear mask or don't wear mask, social distance and those things, we could have all died, or you change, you adapt, right?
What's the biggest thing you guys did?
We flew fast, which what I mean by that is I've always been saying, as I've been building the C-Suite network with C-Suite Radio, C-Suite TV, C-Suite Book Club, and all the things that we do in all of our meetings, our concierge, our services and everything. I said, I'm building the plane as I'm flying it. I've always been saying that. So I'm trying to figure out the model and get the best way to get the best airplane. I'm kind of like the Howard Hughes, where you keep experimenting with these airplanes till you find out what you like, and then you build this Blue Spruce, which is this huge, big thing that you only fly once. And okay, I proved it. I don't need that again. Let's go build these jet fighters that we can sell to the military. And that's what we're doing.
Well, and like so what? Be specific for us. That's a great analogy, but what specifically did you do?
We put all the programs online. We showed everybody how to do them online. We're networking online. We're helping to educate, motivate, and provide inspiration and a chance for monetization online. Well, how did we do that? Well, we experimented. So every week we did different ways of doing the meetings till we figured out this works. This works. And so we said, how can we recreate experiences? So for instance, I'll give you a great example. Every single Friday, you want to come and join us. On Friday, we do what we call C-Suite Network Celebrates. What is that? Well, you remember, Park, you used to drive when you after work on Fridays. What'd you do? You drove home, maybe stopped at a local pub, and you met with some of your friends, and you gave each other a slap on the back if it was a really good week, or maybe a high five if it was a great week, or maybe you gave them a big hug because the week sucked. I mean, all of those things. Well, we couldn't walk into a pub. We couldn't walk into a bar. We couldn't stop at the train station and meet, a colleague or friend and kind of commiserate and talk. So we put it online. So we said, hey, bring your favorite beverage, from water to wine to whiskey, whatever you'd like to do. We're going to get together. We're going to celebrate everybody's success. And we're going to hug you if you need a hug. And we're going to get in a breakout rooms. You're going to meet other people and you're going to mingle and do it just like we normally do. And we get together and what was an hour-long meeting now turns into like 3 hours. People, we got to say, you got to go home. You have to go home.
And that's your have permission to pause gathering every Friday. Is that
you
right?
got permission to pause. You got to take time off. And so we showed people how to do it. And then we showed how you could give online. So our job is to show up and to give. So every Friday and at any of our events, quite frankly, we do this across the board. You show up and you give. What's that mean? Maybe it's a consultation. Maybe you're a CEO of a software company. You've got a great UI and you go, look, I know you're not going to buy my product because it's for, golf courses, but hey, if you want some help with some great UI, I've got a great team. You can have an hour of their time and we'll talk to you about how you can improve your user interface on your website, or, consult with someone or give them a book or introduce them to, hey, I can introduce you to 10 top CEOs, whatever it is. And people do that all the time. And it's absolutely wonderful because you just walk away with all these great gifts. And of course, you're giving to people too. And that helps people grow their businesses.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your C-Suite Radio, and you've seen that grow. How many people do you have on the channel, the network?
Today we have over 400 shows, and we got another couple hundred coming on board. In the process of onboarding right now. We'll be at probably a little over 800 shows by the end of the year. So it continues to grow and grow exponentially. As I mentioned earlier, we grew by 450% of listeners. I mean, right now we sell advertising on the network. for all of the shows that are on our network. And I actually have more ads than I got listeners right now because we just have such great demand for our listeners, because we have a very affluent listener base, because, we serve business people. And of course, business people have more money than 18 to 24-year-olds. And so, and we're primarily B2B or luxury or lifestyle. So we tend to draw a very eclectic and wonderful crowd, that's a very mainstream crowd. And so it's growing. So we're growing by 120% new shows last year. We'll do that again this year. We'll hit well over 800 shows this year, which will give us even more episodes. More episodes, more listeners, more shows means more money.
Do you handle both audio and video
Oh,
podcasts, or
absolutely.
is it just audio?
No, so on the audio side, it's C-Suite Radio, our podcast network. But if you've got video, then we turn it into C-Suite TV, and we put it on Apple, Roku, Amazon Fire. We put it on Samsung. We put it wherever you can watch digital content. We'll put it. I mean, we're on airplanes. We're the business channel on United Airlines, for instance, on WestJet Airlines, Aer Lingus, and numerous other places.
All right. So the question I know people are thinking right now is, what does it cost? How expensive is it to have a show on your networks?
Less than the price of a business meal a month to be able to be on the network and be a part of the platform. And that not only gives your show the hosting site, but all the analytics, the affiliation, the amplification that you get as part of it. That's an important piece. But you're also a member of the C-Suite network. So you're going to have all the meetings, hundreds of meetings, and the interaction. You get to go into the contributor portal. If you need if you're a podcaster and you want a sample guest sheet or sample ways to set up your program, marketing templates, all those things, that's all part of what you get. Marketing kit.
So less than the cost of a business lunch a month. So what? $50? $500?
No, it's $250. It's $250. $250 a month. Yeah.
Wow,
That's the cost of a business meal. I said business meal.
So okay, I mean that's very, very, very affordable. You will have 800 shows on, prospectively by the end of the year. Does the world need another podcast? And why?
It needs good podcast, great podcast, and that's all we put on our network. Look, there's 2 million podcasts in today, with millions and millions of listeners. About 161 million people listen just in North America alone. 161 people, and just as let's say United States, the average person listens to 8 episodes. Listen to 8 episodes from 5 different shows. There's going to be millions and millions of millions more podcasts. We're not even close to market penetration. Okay. The advertising is going to more than double this year. Listeners will increase significantly this year across this in terms of more people listening to podcasts than ever before. It's the most intimate, easiest of content to consume. You don't have to read it. You don't have to slow down. You can be vacuuming at your home. You could be washing dishes. You could be mowing on a lawnmower and listening to podcasts. You can't do that with TV. You can't do that with a book. You can't do that with a blog. You can't do it. You can't even do a Clubhouse call because you make too much noise. So, but you can take in great content, and everyone's looking for great content. I mean, that's the way it is. And it could be long form content, short form content. There's no such thing as what's perfect. You just do what's right for you and what's right for the people that you are trying to target. And that's really what you want to look at.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. You've got a lot of experience in this, and say I'm a listener that's thinking about starting a podcast. I've got several clients that are like, all right, I'm ready to do my show. And they do think they're going to get immediate impact with them. And I explain to them, you've got to be persistent and patient. Yeah. That's the way it works. Or I also know a lot of folks whose shows are kind of fledgling along. So what makes a great show from your perspective? And especially when you all are looking at considering whether bringing a show into the network, what are you looking for?
Well, let's give some statistics. The average podcast is 48 minutes. The average business podcast is 22 to 27 minutes. So it's actually 25 minutes is the average business podcast. Now, what frames that for business? Primarily because most podcasts for business are listened while people are commuting. okay, or working out. Those are the two biggest activities that we typically see. And we track, of course, what devices they're listening on, how long they listen, when do they drop off, at what point they drop off, and how do they consume the ads, not consume the ad. There's a lot of different ways, but what makes a great podcast? Compelling content. Somebody described what's the banter which you did not do, but what's the banter that you do right before the interview starts when you're recording your podcast? And it's called that's called the hang up button because people don't want to hear that. That's a killer for a podcast. A killer for a podcast is opposite of what you did. You did a great intro. And then you got right to the questions. A killer podcast is tell me about yourself. It's a host not doing his or her work. Those are the things that kill podcasts. Bad audio kills podcasts. That's probably one of the biggest tricks because you got to remember you're in someone's ear. What you say, how you say it, the whispering or the if I were to make pops, but you'll pull that out with your, with good software. So those are the things that you learn. So compelling content, gets compelling listeners. And by the way, here's the rule: as fast as they come to you is as fast as they leave you. So you don't want to build them. If you build them fast, they leave you fast. So build it the way you want to build it. And by the way, downloads don't mean shit. So what I mean by that, if you're a business podcaster, okay, I can say that word on your podcast, I hope, but you'll get, if I say too many of them,
No,
you'll get.
you're all good. And I laugh because not at the shit, but that downloads don't mean shit. And I was going to ask you this, a perfect tee up right here real quick. I've got a friend who has a podcast and he's very, very good. It's very entertaining. And I asked him, how are your downloads? He goes, I don't give a shit about my downloads. I said, why are you doing it then? He goes, I do it purely to connect with a client that I want to bring in and land.
Bingo.
And so
Bingo.
My question to you is, I think that's in disservice to your listener. Is it not?
No. He's actually spot on.
Okay.
He's I don't even know who that is, but he's brilliant. Most people want to use a business podcast. Look, you do two things. You want to use it as a target to get to the people that you want to do business with. How do you do that? Two ways. One, you invite people that you'd like to do business with and you interview them and you gain insight. But two, you play to your audience. That's your followers, your tribe, the people to build the community. So those should go hand in hand. I mean, I will tell you that, listen, I interview the CEO of this group or this group or this group, not just because I want them on my show and they're iconic, but also they end up hiring me for speeches or hiring me for this or hiring me for that. Of course I want that. So where I can get a 1-2 punch, that's what he's doing. He's interviewing somebody who might eventually hire him, but at the same time, that conversation is going to be so rich, everybody else is going to get value from it. So he's doing a great thing for his listeners. And if you approach it that way, listen, I did a webinar yesterday for 350 potential podcasters. And you want to begin with the end in mind about what it is you want to do. And I always ask them, do you want fame or fortune? You got to pick one. Because a lot of people go for fame. And that's the wrong thing. In my opinion, you can do that if you want to. I wouldn't do that. I want fortune, which means I want to make money. And how do you make money? And I use the podcast as a way to get me where I want to go. And if I happen to be able to get enough listeners, like I have, you get hundreds of thousands of listeners per show. Well, then I can sell the advertising. I can get money off that. Or I can, if let's say I only get 1,000 listeners per show, I can still be with a network that will sell it together and I still get my fair share. So that's awesome. So I can monetize it that way and it helps me pay for my podcast, which is a great way of being able to do it. The average business podcast, again, 2,500 downloads a month. And so if you can get to that average, that's really good for you. If you get to be like like my podcast, Kiyosaki's podcast, some of the big ones, well, then I'm telling you, that's just, it's major league. But, but that's 1%. That's 1% of all podcasts. Give you some other numbers. I mean, this is, like you said, you have to stick with it. You have to do it, and it's good advice for people, Park, because 38% of all the podcasts on Apple only have one episode. 48% of all the podcasts on Apple iTunes have less than 10 episodes. So if you're going to do podcasting, understand you want to do it for a year and you want to stick with it. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy.
Oh yeah, well, Joe Polizzi, a long time ago. I've been at it now almost 6 years,
Joe's a
and
good guy. Yeah.
full disclosure, I am between 22 and 25,000 downloads a month. Funny thing is, I hit that about a year and a half ago, and it's sort of plateaued, and I'm trying to figure out how.
Hey, brother, you're in the top 10. You're in the top 10% of all podcasts in the world. Do you realize that?
I do, and I use that number, and people then say, "Oh, really? You are, of the top 10 like podcasts in the world?" I go, "No, top 10% of downloaded podcasts in the world." I like to think I'm number one, but I'm not.
Yeah.
But Joe Polizzi said, and I thank God I had him early in my tenure on the show. He goes, "Dude, it's going to take you 18 months before you see appreciable traction. So are you into it for 18 months?" And I go, "Yeah, wow. I'm into it for the long haul."
That's great. Good advice from Joe. Joe's always been great. Of course, Joe's, made millions with content marketing, knows what he's talking about. He's about to kick off another whole big thing I saw here recently. And of course, he's
a good dude too.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. I can remember Joe as he was rising up as a thought leader back, 15 years ago. And when I saw him, I said, somebody should pay attention to that kid. He's going to be, I say kid because I'm older than him, but I said, someone should pay attention to that because he's going to be good. And of course, he wrote Content World. He sold it. He did a good job. And there's a guy who's doing what I say everybody should do right now, which is the brand of you. This is really truly about how you make yourself the brand. Sell you sell the company, you sell you. And you need to keep that front and center. But
yeah,
good advice. It takes a while. I say at least a year. If you're not going to stick with it for a year, don't do it. But you can monetize it, before the year's out. I guarantee you. If you're a consultant, trainer, coach, or even if you're a freaking dry cleaner, okay? This is the key thing. You have to be a media machine. You have to be a media company. That's what you have to know. You have to understand that COVID's done this. COVID didn't cause it, it accelerated it. To the point now you need to know, because there's so many choices for people to find you and your message that right now they've got to find a way to find you. So you've got to create ways to find them. And if they're listening to podcasts, well, how can you ignore that? You got to be on them. You got to go out there, and you can use it to create your own category. So even if you're a dry cleaner in a local community, I would want to be known as the spot guy for Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'd want to be known as the person who takes care of your clothes. All right. I'm the closest thing to you other than your underwear. Okay. That's what I would want to be known as. And I just made that up. And
that's very good, by the way. I like that.
It's pretty good. But you get what I mean. I mean, there's even a TV show that's a guy that does nothing but take spots out of clothing. I mean, that's what you have to do in order to become the expert, because if you got to differentiate yourself from everybody else. And it's a great way of doing it. Podcasting, great way to do it. And while you're doing that, people are going to listen to you, and they're going to come to you, and they're going to do business with you. And that's what you want.
So the C-Suite Network, they come up, they join. Do you not accept some shows? They're not up to the quality you're looking for? Or do you bring in anybody and everybody?
Yeah, no, sometimes. I mean, look, who am I to judge whether your content is great or not? The things I look at, is your content offensive? Is it against our standard of values? If it's against our standard of values, I'm not interested. But I want all kinds of shows. I want small shows, big shows, fat shows, skinny shows, white shows, black shows. I want them all. Okay. Because who am I to judge? I'm not going to judge. We have a TV network, C-Suite TV, and we have a guy that has a show, and I'm not going to point him out, but he has a show and he gets 50,000 views a month, and it's two guys with headsets. On Skype. I mean, and somebody said, well, that's not good quality TV. Well, who am I to say? He's got 50,000 listeners a month. Shut up. Are you kidding me? Of course I love this guy, so how many you got, so that's the way I look at it. It's like, you got to love all children. You just can't say, well, that one's ugly. You can't, like somebody shows you their baby. You don't say, oh gosh, put a veil on that kid. You got to love them all. So the key is to say, here's our values. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's who we're trying to reach. How can we do it? And as long as you're not nuts, okay? Now, when you get nuts, I'll kick you off. And I do. And, we had somebody once who said they were the supreme being or something. And I said, no, off. You can't do that. That's nuts.
That ain't working.
No,
So
if you're the CEO, that's different. But you're not.
I bring the business of story to the C-suite network. $250, pretty much of a no-brainer. What do I get?
It is a no-brainer with all this stuff. It is a no-brainer with all this stuff. And you can go and get your podcast hosted by someone a lot cheaper. Let's be clear. But that's not what we are. We're a business network. We're a platform. We're a place in which I want to put a price to it that makes you think before you get on it. And second, I'm going to market you more than you're going to market yourself. And there's value to that. And if someone doesn't want to pay it, I have no problem with it. It's fine. And it's not about pay to play or any of that. What do I get for that? Great question. Thank you. So first of all, you get the affiliation. You're part of a network. So it's just like being Bloomberg, CBS, NBC. You're now part of the C-Suite Radio Network, and that means you can identify yourself as a headliner. So when you're going after guests, you get to say I'm part of this the world's largest business podcast network. If you're going after sponsors, if you're going after advertisers on your own, if you want to. Second, I go out and sell advertising for you. So we sell advertising, and it's a major, major piece, right? Of it's good revenue. It's good for me. It's good for you. I split that with you 50-50. We're equal partners. That way, you're getting it fair, and I'm getting it fair. The third thing that we do is we give you amplification, which means we're out there marketing it. We're pushing it. You'll see your ads as seen in, as heard. We're turning up the volume on business. That's what we say. That's our trademark. And then last but not least is the analytics. Park. I mean, I found out, I can see what device people, where they're at, what cities, everything. I found out my second largest audience outside of North America. Guess where?
Korea.
It was India. Korea is pretty good too, but India. Well, I used to say things like, hey, I'm going to go for a big juicy steak after the show. Probably not a good thing to say, right? I'm not trying to be offensive by any means or way or shape, but it's just something that a cowboy from South Dakota would say, and probably not the best thing to say. Now, so I now change that because I have so many great listeners. I don't want to be offensive. I want to be inclusive. And by being more inclusive, I still want to be distinctive and different, but I want to be inclusive. So what do? Well, I love Indian food. I do. I love it. I love everything about it. I used to spend, I've spent tons and tons of time in India. I have a family member who's now was born in Calcutta. So, so I say, hey, I'm going to go for a nice bindi, or curry or something like that. And so I work it in. And then, of course, I found out that, the second largest whiskey drinking country, outside of America is India. Well, of course, now I start talking about whiskey, and now I start picking up a whiskey sponsor. See, these are the things that you pay attention to that if I hadn't had a network, I wouldn't have known those kinds of analytics. And so I get all those kinds of analytics that are at my fingertips. So, and
you get those once a month as a member?
Oh, you do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can check it out.
You just pop in and check it out. And
I have my podcast open right now. I'm watching it right as we speak on my screen. And I'm watching downloads and little things pop up when someone's now listening from Cleveland, and someone's listening from St. Louis, and someone's listening from Salt Lake City or from Mumbai or wherever. It's the freaking coolest thing in the world.
And here I thought I had your full and undivided attention on the business of story.
Absolutely. It was another voice that was speaking through me. I
got you. I got you. How quickly can you get a show up and running on your network?
About 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And if somebody has an existing show, like let's say 100 episodes, 200, 300, or even 3,000 episodes, it takes us a few minutes to bring them over.
Yeah. So I've got, you are what, show 311 here on the Business of Story. And I'm, of course, on Libsyn and everywhere else.
Yep.
Do I keep my show on Libsyn and everywhere else? Or do you port it all into your network? And
we port it over. Okay. We'll take care of it for you. We become your new hosting platform. So Libsyn, Blueberry, or whatever, the Podbean, all those are hosting engines. We replaced that. We put that on our system where we actually have a backbone that we partner with Megaphone, which is really the biggest engine that's out there. They just were recently purchased by Spotify. We're a large customer of Megaphone, obviously, but with the number of shows that we have and the volume that we have. And then you have access to that. We put it on that platform, and we actually have you keep your other one for like 30 days just as a backup. But we've never found anyone ever need it. But we always say, hey, just for 1 month, do that. And then we port it over, and literally takes minutes. And then you're immediately up and running, and you're getting all the statistics, all the benefits from it. And then you start attending. We've got meetings once a month where we get together with all of our podcasters, and we talk about tips and tricks, and we put somebody in a hot seat. And you might say, hey, I'm having trouble getting guests, or I'm having trouble with conveying the value to my sponsors, or hey, I need this or that. And then you have 400 other experts who have done this. They're not giving you advice, they're giving you counsel. And that's more expensive and more valuable than advice, because these are people who've been there and done it. So it's awesome.
All right. So what happens after 6 hard, diligent years of Parkel and the Business of Story, building out his thing, jumps over, and we do it today. In 5 minutes, I'm up and running. 5 months from now, Jeffrey Hayzlett gets run over in a devastating South Dakota stampede of buffaloes. There becomes infighting at the C-Suite network.
Never.
It becomes a dumpster fire like Kodak. It disappears in 8 months. What happens to all my content at that point?
You just take it. You take it and go wherever you'd like to go. It's your content. We don't own it. It's yours. Why would
we
I
have
want
access to the files?
access?
We just port it back over into Libsyn, and away you
or
go.
wherever you want to go. Yeah, wherever is best for you. If you in 30 days don't like what you see or what you get out. There's no problem with that. We'd love to. We don't have that. It's rare that happens. We've been operating for a couple of years, and it rarely happens. Especially now that we've matured more. And when you first get started with a bit, we used to charge people $12,000 to be on the network. Now it's a lot cheaper because the costs come down, and we're making money from the advertising. So eventually I see that cost coming down, but we might keep it up there just because it keeps us all humble. It makes sure that you realize the value of it. If you don't pay in, if you don't, give something, it's like when you go over to people's dinner for Thanksgiving, if you don't bring some wine, you don't bring a hot dish, you kind of you take advantage. That's what, what I mean? Then you're a guest. Well, you're not a guest, you're a partner. If you're a partner, you bring some buns,
All right. So going back, you had said the average podcast is 48 minutes. The average business podcast most listened to is 22 to 25 minutes. My show typically goes anywhere.
27 minutes. 25 is the average minutes that we see. Yeah.
Around 20. Okay. Under 30. My show, The Business of Story, typically will run 45 to 60 minutes after my intros and that kind of thing. What's your advice to me? Because I am definitely looking for the business people, but I do also get people that don't hire me, but I'm helpful in their personal life. I mean, they're listening to this, and they're working with their kids on communication, storytelling, and other things. If I wanted to be more successful, what would you recommend?
Well, it's kind of hard to be a storyteller and not have time, right? So
I know
your format's a little bit different. I mean, like we have got Tom Fox. Now, Tom Fox has got 23 different podcasts on the network, 20 or more than that. He does, I think, half of them, and most of his are on legal and their compliance. Well, you wouldn't want to hear a 40-minute compliance podcast. So I don't, as good as you are, Tom, and I love you, there's no one. Okay? But some of his podcasts are 2 or 3 minutes. Perfect for what he does, because what he's doing is teaching lessons of legal compliance. Well, so do what's best for you. Do it the way you want to. Doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. Guess what? It's the way you want to do it. And so that's the best advice I can give to anybody that's doing a podcast or doing their own creative and doing their own IP. It is your IP. It's your way. And that's what we do. Now, we give you hints about intros, exits. We give you, hints about different, where to drop in ads, how to make the pauses, do those kinds of things. But you truly want to do the content the way you want to do it. And that's really important.
Yeah. Do you all offer any sort of production services?
Yeah, we don't do it specifically, but we have a stable of great production people, because that's what they do well. And I don't want to compete against them. I just want to augment what they do, and I want to make sure that we have a great state. Because sometimes I could say, hey, just go to, like, let's say John, Essie, Chad, Priscilla. We have all these different people that do this, and I wouldn't want to just say, oh, just go to them. Well, which one's right for you? Because everybody has a different personality. We all work differently. We're all very creative. And so we have a couple that we say, hey, you might want to, let's interview you first. Let's figure out what you want. And then this one or this one might be good for you.
Gotcha. Okay. And
And
then I
then you
guess my
decide,
final question.
but it costs about, anywhere from 100 probably to 400. The average I would tell people is about $150 per episode. If you add video, it's going to be a little bit more. That's about right.
Yeah, I gotcha. And you are out there pushing the network and helping to find advertising for shows and so forth. If I sign up the Business of Story today, do you give me an account executive? Do I have someone to speak directly with there to help me do this, or how's that work?
Well, the good news is we don't have account executives. We have concierge, because you're in the C-suite.
Oh, there you go.
And so we're here to serve you. So, listen, that's our mentality in the C-suite network, is to put you in a trusted network of other executives, and you should be served in the manner you used to serve. When I was the CMO of Eastman Kodak, when I went to a trade show and I stepped out of the hotel room at 7 a.m, someone had a sandwich there, egg sandwich for me. Someone had my favorite beverage. Someone was briefing me. Someone walked ahead of us in order to hit the elevator so that I didn't even have to wait for the damn elevator to open. Well, that's what we want to do in the C-suite. Just like when you go to your local pub, your local bar, and they know what you like to eat or what you like to drink. Before my butt hits that stool, there's a glass of scotch on there. That's what we want to do for you. Now, do we do it all the time? No, I wish we did, but we doggone work really hard to make it happen. So you will have, your Mitch, and we'll call it Mitch, or you'll have your concierge who will be there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and be available to you. And we're very responsible on that stuff. Because the worst thing could happen is if your podcast we've never had this, but if it went down or something like that. TV's a little tougher. The video is a little tougher. There's lots of glitches. It's big files and so forth. So it's a little tougher, but we work real hard to make it as seamless as possible.
What do you prefer, audio podcasts or video?
Whatever the customer prefers. That's what I prefer. You can't judge it based on what you like. You have to base it on what the person you're targeting to, that you want to be part of your community. If you called me today, Park, and we got on the phone, the first question I'd ask you, or we were doing let's say a Zoom chat, I'd say, hey, how can I help you? That's my mentality. And I think that's the best way to serve people, is to say, how can I help you? And so with the same thing, I think, is with content. You go to where the people are. It's an old Sam Kinison routine. He used to talk about starving people in the desert. When you live in a desert, the food doesn't grow in a desert. Move to where the food is. And so that's what I think podcasters and people with content, people with IP that they use to sell them and sell the business, you got to go where the people are. So I don't pre-subscribe what it is. I mean, look, I don't like TikTok, but I have to do it. I don't care for Instagram. Okay. I mean, I get people like it. They love it. I don't care for it. Fine. I mean, I don't dislike it, just not my gig, but I have to do it. Right. Because that's where people are. And so that's what you got to keep in mind. If,
Okay.
we have this all the time. People come to me and they say, hey, I don't believe people are doing this. Well, I don't care what you believe. What's your customer believe?
Jeffrey, you started the show saying, you're just getting better with every day. You're not getting older, you're getting better. Let's close on the question of how are you enjoying life and what's happening in your world that you maybe thought never would, especially coming out of the dark days of Kodak Eastman or Eastman Kodak.
I tell you what COVID helped me with. I have never been home this much in my entire life, ever. I'm telling you, in my entire life, I've never been home this much, and I've never enjoyed more. And so it's taught me to appreciate the things that are meaningful to me more than ever. And, a lot of us, we say this, but I'm doing it and I'm going to continue to do it. I don't have to do that. And why? There's a saying over my door in the office in Sioux Falls, and we have offices in New York, LA, San Francisco. We have people in New Jersey. I got people in Florida. We got people everywhere. And then everybody says, why are you in Sioux Falls? And I finally just said one day, because we can. Because I can, And you know what? That's how I'm starting to live my life more and more, is because I can. So if I want to work from home, if I want to work in shorts, if I want to work with pants on, I want to work this way, I want to work that way because I can. And I think that's the philosophy that I'm coming out with.
I will be out in Sioux Falls for the very first time in my life. Spent a lot of time in North Dakota and Minnesota with aunts, uncles, and grandparents there, but I'll be in Sioux Falls in September for one of my first in-person speaking gigs. If you happen to be in town, I would love to share a whiskey with you.
Oh, done. Count on it. You got it. We won't share one. We'll share a number of them, because if you're going to drink whiskey, drink it all.
Have you tried Woodenville Whiskey?
I have not, but I'll write it down. I'm going to write it down right now.
It's small batch out of Woodenville, Washington, which is just north of Seattle, where I grew up. Some brothers who we all went to high school together, they started literally creating this stuff in their basement and then moved to a warehouse and then built a beautiful place, and they sold it, but they have still maintained the small batch nature of it. It's fantastic bourbon. If you're a bourbon drinker at all, highly recommend Woodenville Whiskey. Check it out.
I'm going to try it. I just tried one that a friend of mine said that they sent me over 2 bottles off the very first batch they've made, and it's called the Buffalo Chip Whiskey, and one that's a bourbon. And I tried the bourbon night before last for the very first time. I popped open that bottle, and wow, I'm not a huge bourbon drinker. I'm more of a Scotch drinker. I love Scotch.
Mm-hmm.
I can drink Scotch like water. And I didn't even become a whiskey or Scotch drinker until about 5 years ago. And prior to that, I never really drank. And now I do like to imbibe. I do enjoy a good Scotch. I love a great whiskey, and I love a great bourbon when you can, wherever you find them. And you know what? You just keep tasting until you find them. And that sounds good. So I wrote it down.
Woodenville Whiskey. Check out Jeffrey Hayzlett. Thanks for being here. Where can people learn more about the C-Suite Network and you, and where do we send them?
All you got to do is look at C-Suite Network, C-Suite, S-U-I-T-E, network.com. You can find us anywhere. If you type in the word C-Suite, we're always going to be in the top 3 searches, because we are. And of course, you can find me, Jeffrey Hayzlett, Hayzlett, and you can write me at jeff@c-suitenetwork.com.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate your time being here today.
My pleasure.
Thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. Who knows? You may be hearing the next ones coming from the C-Suite Radio Network. We'll see. After I hang up here, I'm going to pick his brain a little bit more. If I can be of service to you, come on over to The Business of Story, where I can help you craft and tell compelling business, brand, and sales stories that actually sell. And until next Monday, when we will have another amazing artist here like Jeffrey, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is a story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for listening.